Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my show. If you're on the podcast, William Wallace for America. I am William Wallace, and with me today is Andi Buerger. And before I bring her on, I'm going to tell you, you're about to be enlightened about some information that's not talked about. I've been covering a couple of top topics lately that people don't want to talk about. It's either taboo in their mind or they're uncomfortable talking about it. And I'll admit, even for me as a podcaster, radio show host, sometimes these things are hard for me to talk about and listen to. But the reality of it is that we really need to talk about it, hear other people that are passionate about it, because Andi's voice is doing the work of what a lot of us might feel uncomfortable doing. But before we get started, I want to thank my sponsor, Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile believes in the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. They're pro-life, they're pro-military, pro-first responders, pro-constitution. But the best part about it is they put their money where their mouth is by donating a portion of their proceeds to all those types of organizations that share the same values. The coverage for your cell phone service is going to be the same or better. The rates are going to be the same or better in a lot of ways. Please check them out. Go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA, patriotmobile.com/WWFA. Andi, thank you so much for being on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're so welcome, and I'm very honored to be on the show.
Well, I tell you, did I hit the nail on the head? Not that I want kudos, that you're doing a lot of work out there for human trafficking victims, for sexual assault victims, and some other things which we're going to bring out during this show.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I am trying to be the voice that ignites other voices to collectively, go after the predators, go help the victims, and do whatever we can to turn the tide back around on the human trafficking issue. So thank you for that.
Well, let's get something started off right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you are a victim yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's not only relevant in this, but I think it's important because it gives people a very unique perspective that you're not just an activist, you're a victim. And I think that's important. Do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely, yes. One of the reasons, I share my story is for that, to let people know that this isn't just a hobby. I didn't just pick it up last week and decide, hey, I'll jump on this train. But back before there ever was a term called human trafficking, back even when people weren't talking about child abuse in the early 60s and 70s, I was actually trafficked by family members, which is called familial trafficking. But I was trafficked from 6 months to 17 years old. And so it was a
So
very evil childhood.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You were being sex trafficked at 6 months old.
I was being sexually violated by immediate family members from that age, which is what the counselors and the psychologists and everybody determined was the starting point. And so my birth mother was the primary sexual predator in the family. And then, of course, there were others. So they didn't know about trafficking or that they could make money off of it or anything. But the sexual violations started as early as 6 months. And then, there were extended family members. And the only way that you could be with an extended family member as a child, even 3, 4, 5 years old, would either be transporting you to them or they came to the house and did whatever other people were doing in the house. So by the time I was 5, you hear of mothers or parents that play doctor too much with their children, or they do other things. There's a lot of ways to be violated. And I don't want to be graphic, but, if people think about it, there are a lot of ways to be inappropriate with babies and children. And we find that more and more today, sadly. But at the age of 5, for me, it was so gruesome and so brutal. The physical abuse, the beatings, all of that, and the other sexual violations, that I thought I'll just kill myself because it would be easier than living in that house. So I went down to the curb of my house and I sat there and I waited for a car to be coming by fast enough, because my birth mother always said, I can take you out anytime I want to. And I thought, well, I'll just beat her to the punch and then I'll never be touched. I'll never be brutalized. I'll never,
And this is at 5 years old?
5 years old, and I was very little. I'm way big now. I'm 5'3", but
Right.
then I was not very big. I was a small child, and so as I was waiting, I looked up into this huge blue sky, and I thought, I wonder how far does it go, and who made it, and is there somebody bigger than the people that were hurting me? Because I really wanted to believe that maybe there was a chance for me, but in that moment I heard God's voice in my heart. And for me, it was God. For other people, it might be something else. But for me, I heard these words: "This is not the plan I have for you. Suicide is not the answer." And I trusted that voice. I looked around. I thought, wow, maybe there is someone bigger. And I went up to the garage and I leaned against the door. And right there and then I said, if you keep me alive, I'll do whatever you call me to do. Now, clearly, I didn't know how hard it would be.
But Andy, and I'm not trying to play. I hate the word devil's advocate. I wish there was another term that for devil's advocate. But that was in year 5, and this lasted till you're 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
How
Yes.
how did I mean for 11 more years? How'd you endure feeling like you put your body, your life into God's hands, and this kept happening? But obviously, it got worse.
Yes, it did. I think because it was a blind faith, I didn't actually, my brother and I had been taken occasionally to church, so I didn't really quite grasp who God was. I think I just believed that if he existed, then he was bigger than all these people. Then if I just held out long enough, it was a kind of a primal, if I live, I win. If I die, the evil people win. So that was kind of probably more the motivation as I look back. But I did try, again at 8 and at 9 when I was locked up in a room for 3 months in summer because of a lie someone had told about me. And I got meals, but that was it. I couldn't go anywhere, no birthdays, nothing. And so it was hard. It was hugely hard. I still wanted to die. I cried out to God to let me die. Please just let them kill me and get it over with. I didn't have friends. You couldn't just ask anybody to come over to
How
our
how
house.
how regular was it?
Daily sometimes there were breaks. I remember distinctly hearing my birth father's voice in the middle of the night: "Don't tell your mother," you know.
How old were
And
you?
those years, that was like from probably 5 on till I was probably 14, 15 years old.
It was a stepfather or your real father?
Biological father, yes.
So
So it was definitely a very trying period, as you can understand, because you go to school and I had to be perfect. I couldn't get bad grades. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't talk. I was monitored all the times, as was my brother at that time. So predators do that. They control you, they manipulate you. And back in the early 60s and 70s, they would have called my birth mother a ritualistic abuser because she got off on doing that.
so let me say this. I have mainly a political show, if you will. I do a lot of politics. I do a lot of political interviews. I bring on a lot of people about our country. My name of my show is William Wallace for America.
Mhm.
I like talking about things that unites us, things that are going to improve our country, things that we are, things that I think that are going to help bring us together for solutions. And I'm repeating there on that, and I'm doing that for a reason. I try to bring on things that help renew our spirit in
Mhm.
America, and this topic doesn't fit that category at all
Mhm.
on the top on the surface. But the reason why I'm bringing you on, I'm gonna let my listeners know this. I'm gonna, kind of let the cat out of the bag, so to
Mhm.
speak, on why I'm doing this, because I think this is a problem in our country that is, as I said at the beginning, so taboo to talk about
Mhm.
and so painful to talk about that I don't think people are realizing that this is something that is going on in our country that's dismantling our country. I think that there's a lot of, you know, people think it's just politics. People think that the liberal Democrats are destroying our country. People think that abortion's destroying our country. People think that the national debt's destroying our country. While all of those things are, in different proportions. I think that there's also a lot of things under the surface that
Mhm.
we don't see and don't and just kind of like go, yeah, I don't want to talk about that. That's too
Yeah.
painful. And that's why I'm bringing you on. I'm going to try to make more of a political connection with it, Andy, than what you are. And and that's kind of what I'm going to try to do to try to find because our elected officials, this is something that you don't hear about from our elected officials. Something
Mm-mm.
you don't hear about from many people. And I just think that our children, this is one of the ways our children are in trouble.
Absolutely, they're in trouble. We are a nation that allows our children to be sold, not just for sexual activity, for labor, for their organs. We allow victims to suffer needlessly because depraved nature takes over. And as you said, not many politicians are speaking about this. In fact, when my nonprofit Voices Against Trafficking launched back in 2019 on Capitol Hill, there were only 7 members of Congress that showed up in support to say, yes, we need to do something about it. Now, we had members from both sides of the fence. We had Representative Pete Olson, we had Representative Chip Roy, we had Representative Congressman Jim Costa from California. So we had several congresswomen who were also there, but 7 out of like 536. Where were the rest
Wow.
of the legislators? Where were the rest of the people that say they represent the people? Because they do not represent me. They do not represent the people that I serve, the victims that my husband and I have rescued. We don't have enough resources for their aftercare when they are rescued. And I think it would be good for viewers and listeners to know just a couple of statistics, if that's okay with you. Because,
Absolutely. But
okay,
before you get those statistics, I recently interviewed, have you ever heard of Kaylee's Law?
yes.
So I interviewed Kaylee Kozak last week. She was on my show about her victims law. And
Mhm.
then do you have heard of Seek Smith with the Mom's Army?
Mhm.
Have you heard of her?
I've heard of her.
Yeah, she actually tells a story of, when she started Mom's Army, it was because of, she heard a story in Pennsylvania, I think, of a girl selling her younger sister,
Yeah.
to 7 men, and so, but the statistics that you're gonna have, please share those with us so we can see, what's going on in our country.
Absolutely. Well, we know that every 40 seconds in the US, just the US alone, a child 18 years or younger goes missing. Okay, Donald W. Washington from the US Marshal Service, the FBI, that statistic has been used and verified by many agencies.
Right,
Every 40 seconds. So when somebody says, "Oh, well, that doesn't happen in my neighborhood, I know everybody." Well, not really,
right,
because today's predator doesn't look like the swarthy predators you see in movies, although movies are a great way to get the topic out there sometimes. But the everyday predator would look like a librarian or your dentist or the meat packer or somebody. So you can't just say, oh, it doesn't happen, because we know it does. And that's just what's reported. Imagine if we actually had reports from every victim of sexual assault or human trafficking. The other part of it is people hear numbers and they don't really put faces. And that's one of the reasons I do speak, because here I am. I'm a face. Okay. I'm a body. I'm a human being that experienced that when nobody knew about human trafficking. Okay. Nobody came to my rescue. Nobody was looking for me. And so I was truly alone and alienated. And so victims are sold anywhere from 20 to 25 times a day or a night. Imagine a 13-year-old, if you have a niece or a nephew or your own children that age or grandchildren. Imagine them being put through that day after day after day. So this is it's a very gruesome thing, and I understand that, but I also speak because of the hope that we have. The hope is collectively as a nation, if we decided to stand up and say, this is wrong. Human trafficking is the second largest illegal enterprise in America. Wow. Should we be proud of that?
what's the biggest enterprise, illegal enterprise?
Drugs still, but not by much.
Wow. And because of that, people still are opening their eyes. What are some other statistics that you're aware of?
Well, we know that with the border situation, we have an influx not only of innocent children who are just left here. Most, if any, know the English language. Most do not know the English language. So you have children here, you have young teenagers here with no parent, no adults. If they're not taken by cartels or if they're not taken by predators to be sold, we know that they come across with numbers on their arms. You can call that number and do whatever you want with that child. They're sold at the border. I don't have a recent dollar amount, but a year and a half ago, the going rate for a child at the border was about $3,500. You could buy a child and do whatever you wanted with them. So
And then
how is that compassionate?
and this is going on in our country at the border. And this is yet, like I said a few minutes ago, people would wonder, why am I covering a topic like this on a show where I talk to a lot of elected officials and
Mhm.
things that have to do with America and politics. But yet this is right here. Our border is an issue, and people don't realize. And people that it used to be the narrative that the people are coming to America for a better life.
Mhm.
Then we realize how much now, of course, recently, fast forward, 40, 50 years, now people realize how much fentanyl, drugs, human trafficking has come across the border. And this is not only dangerous for our border and for our citizens, but it is deteriorating our nation as a whole, because by accepting this illegal immigration, for whether it's immigration, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex trafficking, we are watering down not only morals. Let's forget about what it's doing to morals in America.
Mhm.
We're watering down safety for humans in our
Absolutely.
country by allowing this to come across our border and infiltrate our culture in America.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Let's say you took human trafficking out of it. Let's say you took the criminality of some people, coming over the border out of it. Who's checking every person that comes across that border for diseases, for infections, for COVID, for any of those things that could be going on? So, like you said, safety, public safety from a health perspective, public safety from a criminal perspective, from the potential for your child to OD on a drug that didn't look like a drug because it looked like candy at a party or something. So there are so many issues involved, and why more people, schools, churches, or social groups, where are the people standing up for the victims of this? And yes, that includes all of the young people that came over the border with or without somebody, most probably because somebody promised their family, oh, we'll get them over the border for a price, right?
Right, right.
And we know 80% of the women before they get to the border, to the US border, are raped or are violated. So we are not doing anything compassionate by allowing so many when we have limited resources. And then again, think about the schools, think about the hospitals, think about all those things that get taxed in the process. So, with Voices Against Trafficking, yes, we are very focused on anti trafficking, public awareness, public education, uh, solutions to the problem, executing solutions to the problem, getting other people excited to be part of the solution, things
Right.
like that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the person who's listening, who's watching right now, that decides, you know what? It could be my kid, my grandkid, my niece, my nephew, my cousin next. It could be my wife. It could be whatever. Maybe I should get more educated, get more aware. And to your point about politics, William, absolutely. Ask your mayor, ask your city council, ask your state representative, your governor, your legislators. What are you doing to safeguard our neighborhoods from trafficking, from an influx of drugs? What are they focused on? Follow the money is what I say, because
So
usually that's what they're after.
so let's talk about your two books,
Mhm.
and I want you to mention where people can get them. But and because I know that you had two books that talk about this,
Yes.
and then I want to talk about your nonprofit on what you're doing to help stop this, because obviously, like we've talked about, and I'm not trying to stop you in mid thought, because I'm going to tell you I agree 100%. The trafficking that's come across the border, and like you talked about, by the way, not to kind of circle back here again, but the body part trafficking.
Mhm.
You know, people think that sex trafficking, drug trafficking, but they don't realize the body part harvesting that's
Yes.
going on with children also. So is this on your radar also?
Yes, it is. And we are involved in some active rescues depending on what comes, to our attention, but we have agencies. We're a network of networkers basically. So we reach out immediately if we're contacted. The harvest organing, or I'm sorry, the organ harvesting is a much different situation, but it is growing unfortunately because of the dollars that are basically uh, earned by doing that.
So let's talk about your 2 books. The first book is What a Fragile Thread of Hope, I think it is.
Yes, A Fragile Thread of Hope, One Survivor's Quest to Rescue. And that's on Amazon.com in ebook and print. That book started out, I had a writer friend. I had just had a pretty significant brain injury and I needed help kind of organizing my thoughts and stuff. But basically, it's a little bit of my story
How
and
did
a
that
little,
happen, by the way?
I'm sorry, the brain
The
injury.
brain injury.
Well, I've had 10, but that particular one was going down 2 flights of stairs. My brain and my heart have a little trouble syncopating once in a while, and so but here I am.
No, no, I'm sorry to hear you've had so many.
Oh, thank you. I do pretty well. The good thing about rescuing kids is you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just have to be passionate and have a heart to want to make sure that that person doesn't suffer like you have in life. But the book, so A Fragile Thread of Hope, actually goes through 4 stories of teens that my husband and I rescued through our shelter that we had for 14 years and who they are. Not all of them were trafficked, but why they were on the streets. Most of the kids on the streets, yes, you do have some rebellious ones. And if someone out there was never a rebellious teen, then you were lucky. But these kids run to the streets because what they're running from is so much worse. So then they end up on the street. How do they make a live? How do they live? How do they clean up? How do they eat? So it becomes another set of problems for them and they are vulnerable to predators of all kinds, pedophiles, human traffickers. So our goal is to get them early enough where they can make better choices and have a chance to finish school. And in fact, we rescued over 300 kids. 10 of them went through university and all of them were working. All of them gave
How
back.
where did you rescue them from?
I live in Central Oregon, but some of the kids came from other states, other towns into Central Oregon. And then we also rescued a few outside of Oregon over a 14-year period. My husband and I actually had 16 of those teens live with us on and off over the years. So we took in those kids and we had a lot of parents offering us their teens, but we really focused on the ones that needed us.
Here, take my teenager. You can have them, right?
Yeah, they all had to finish high school. They had to be working. They had 3 to 5 months to get their act together and get ready to move back into
So these are
community.
kids that you've taken off the street.
Yep.
Unbelievable. And are you just found them on the street and you offered them a place to live without even knowing who they were?
Basically, especially if they were in trouble, we had a safe house system that we created. And what would happen, let's say you were the teen, then we'd say, okay, William, here's the deal. Here's our contract. This is what we expect. This is what's appropriate. And as long as you abide by this, and you finish high school and you get and maintain a job, which we'll help you with, then you can stay in the safe house for 3 to 4 months, because that's what kind of the average was for them to be able to get enough money, get stable, eat, sleep, start stabilizing internally. They still have to deal with all the garbage that happened to them. But our goal was to make sure at 17, 18, 19, 20, at the age where they're supposedly an adult, that they could still go out, rent an apartment, have roommates, successfully reintegrate back into community, and then decide where to go from there. And so that's what we did.
So how old were you? I could be all look. The questions are just rapid fire into my head right now. So how old were you when you were able to re-enter society? How old were you when you finally were able to escape your bad
Mhm.
situation and get on your own?
Well, I didn't have anyone that necessarily helped me. So basically, it took a long time. I was 17 the last time my birth mother tried to kill me, and I ran out of the house. The only good thing my birth father did was pull her off of me. Ran out of the house, and I realized I'm 17. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. I have no extended family. I'm out in the middle of the dark in a huge city, and the police station was miles away. And because I knew I was a minor, they'd send me back. So I ended up sneaking back into the house like a coward because I didn't know how to help myself. So I graduated high school and went to college. And that was my first real break physically away from the predators that I lived with. But I saw other people and I thought, I wonder if they live like I do. Like, did they have the same life? I didn't really know, and I began putting pieces together. So I fast tracked. I finished college in 3 years. And then I took a year to work and went to law school thinking, you know what? I'll go save other kids that were like me. And I really thought I could do some good. But what I found out was that that justice system was not the kind of justice I was looking for. Kids were getting sent back to abusive parents because the judge would say, well, every child belongs with their mother, or their dad,
Yeah.
without investigating why that kid is running away all the time, or why there are bruises on them, or why they're failing in school. And so I finished law school because I'm a natural redhead and I guess I don't know the word quit. uh, so I finished law school and went back to business because I thought, you know what? I'll find a way to help other kids like me, but I think I need to get on my own feet, be successful somewhere, and then I can, figure out how to do that.
So Andy, do you ever have contact with your parents?
No, my birth father, after age 35, I realized that they weren't going to change. And I tried to be the obedient daughter type thing.
So you stayed in touch with them from 17 to 35, even though you got away.
I did. I did. I finally, the physical distance didn't do as much because what people don't understand is even if you take the victim out of the physical circumstance, they're dealing with the emotional, mental self-talk, all of that self-image stuff. I never liked myself. I didn't love myself. I just worked harder than anyone. So I got places and I got attention from CEOs and people that allowed me to grow. And so I just had a great game face. I just put on a great game face. No one ever got to know me very well because I never let that
But
part
the
out.
abuse, but the abuse had stopped at that point.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, the
And look,
verbal abuse.
and the only reason I'm bringing this up during this interview, again, to relate to politics, to relate to our
Mhm,
society, is because, for adults in America to let this be, look, it's hard enough to get adults involved in politics. It's
mhm,
hard enough to get adults involved in going out and going to elections and voting. It's hard to get adults to say, let's get involved in politics because our politicians are stealing our money. They're look, and let me don't get it wrong. They're not stealing our money because they're getting checks from the government or they're, getting the side deals. That's not what I'm referring to. They are spending our money and borrowing on the backs of our children and our grandchildren.
that's
We
right.
can't get people involved to be able to go stop that spending. We can't get people involved to stop the border being overrun. We can't get people involved to get politicians to fix our streets. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little worked up here. You know, let alone getting people involved to get politicians involved to stop human trafficking
Mhm,
and the abuse of children. And what happens as a result isn't that we have a nameless victim who's too young and is gonna and maybe they think they're gonna forget about it before they're adults. We're messing up humans.
yeah.
We are by people ignoring what's going on. We are creating a society of humans that cannot associate well, cannot integrate well,
Mhm,
cannot live a normal life. So not only do we have people that can't go vote and do their civic duty and be involved, but they're emotionally, mentally messed up. And I'm not being critical. Thank God you've been able to learn how to cope, deal, and be able to live a regular life. But I'm sure there's a lot of people, most of them, I would presume, that aren't able to do what you've been able to do. And so now we perpetuate not only people that are addicted to the government crack on, programs that keep them financially dependent, but now we've got a society of people that can't associate well with others. It's
That's
just
right. And they
it's just
act out.
exactly. We're wondering why crime is going up because we don't have opportunities for our citizens because our elected officials aren't doing the right things. We don't have, and we wonder why we have high crime rates. That's one of them. Well, here's the other one: humans that have been forgotten about in the system because other people aren't sticking up for them, and you're
Mhm.
doing that. I mean, thank God we got somebody like you, Andy, that's sticking up for young people and putting your own life out there. And I thank you for that.
Well, thank you. It really is because I cannot do anything else. I mean, with the different adversities I've had, which we don't need to go into physically, but there are always after effects. So here's one thing. Uh, when a victim, let's say they are rescued, let's say someone like me does get out, there's a lot of work. Healing, everyone wants to get healed, but nobody wants to do the work. The work is hard, it's painful, it's agonizing, it can be brutal, but at the end of that dark tunnel, there is the light. And so, but somebody has to be able to introduce a victim to the opportunity to heal, to the opportunity to get help, and not just say, okay, well, we got you out of trouble, go find a job, go do this, go down the street to that agency. No,
See you later.
yeah, see you later. I
Bye.
mean, and the mental issues that can be caused or that could be exacerbated by all of that abuse. So, a lot of our kids had other issues, from autism to some mental issues to learning disabilities. A lot of them were ADHD and were very misunderstood because ADHD kids are very bright. But again, if there's abuse and other things involved, how do you get to those other issues to help them cope? So one of the things I very much advocate for, one, human rights in general. Every human should have the right to be valued, to be protected, and that includes our children, the future of our country. And as you just said, the future of our country, if we're doing this to our kids, is not going to be looking so great.
I mean,
Why?
we're killing them through abortion. We're ignoring them while they've been trafficked. We're ignoring them if they've been abused. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're right. You're right on. And why? When did it become okay to use children as chattel again, to use children as bargaining chips, to use them for depraved agendas? Because any agenda that steals the innocence of a child, whether it's political, financial, corporate, anything. I mean, the stuff that I saw a 6-month-old baby wearing a little onesie with a some kind of saying on it that belongs to a faction
Right.
of people. And I'm like, do you really think that 6-month-old knows what they're wearing? Probably
Right.
not.
Yeah.
But the
Exactly.
parent bought it.
Exactly.
So it generated income for somebody, right? A lot of it's greed and
Right.
depravity. But then there are also really great people out there. There are a lot of survivors who are amazing mentors and leaders. But again, the voices are small. So that first book was kind of an introduction to who are these teens that are really on the street? Why are they there? What can we do to help? Here's a system. Our system had a 92% success rate of these kids going back into community successfully and staying in community for a minimum of a year with very minimal to no assistance. So that was a great goal. And then, of course, funding and other things. I had some health issues. So after 14 years, we kind of had to let that go. But at that time, Voices Against Trafficking evolved, and which I'll tell you about. But I want to
Yep.
tell you one really super positive thing. My husband and I became official parents in our 60s because we adopted one of the girls we rescued 8 years ago.
Wow.
And
After all the kids that you've helped,
yep,
you've adopted one.
absolutely. Well, we have a small
Congratulations.
house.
Okay.
I mean, we have a small house. I probably would have taken all the kids in, but she chose us. She thought about it. We pretty much raised her from 18 when we got her, like the day after her 18th birthday. She came to our shelter, hadn't eaten for days, and all of this kind of stuff. But today, straight A university student. She's going to go on and get, a master's or a doctorate to help other kids, through social
Amazing.
work. So these are valuable human beings. I say that not because we're so good, but to say, hey, everyone, wake up. These kids have value. They need to be protected. They need our help. And we need you to be involved in solutions. Things that don't necessarily have to cost money or cost a lot of time. But at the very least, if the people you vote for can't tell you what they're doing to educate your kids how to protect themselves, to get programs in equal to all the other programs that are being pushed down their throats, then they need to be fired. Don't vote for them. Don't give them contributions. If they cannot show you what they're doing to help kids in your community be protected and get the things that they need if they are hurt, if they do become victims.
I've always said when it comes to pro-life, pro-choice, I've always said that, I'm a freedom liberty guy. I'm not about taking away people's freedoms, even though I might not disagree with them. So when it comes to the argument between pro-life and pro-choice, I always talk about adoption, because I think that adoption is the best way to stop the argument on whose rights are whose rights are better, whose rights are more important, kind of thing. And adoption is something that I think we can all come together on. And I also think that it strengthens the value of human life.
Mhm.
And what you've done tonight, and I'm giving you credit for this, is you've helped me make a connection that, that human trafficking is just another attack on the value of human life.
Mhm.
When we as a society accept what's going on with the abuse and the trafficking of children, we are contributing to the devaluation of human life.
Yes.
And that is another thing that I was saying earlier, that in itself degrades our society. It degrades our values. And forget let's forget about morals. Let's forget about the moral part of it. And I mean, although it's one of the most important parts, and make it real simplistic sounding. When you devalue human life, you dismantle society in such a
Mhm.
way that we are all going to lose. We're
Absolutely.
we're all gonna lose we're all gonna lose in our time here on this earth, and our country's gonna lose.
Mhm.
Forget about the greatest country to ever come to. Forget about the place that everyone wants to migrate to. Forget about the opportunities. Forget about our system of elections, whatever. If we continue with the decline of America through the devaluation of human life, we're not going to have anything.
That's right, because we are becoming very quickly an uncivilized country. We may have more bells and whistles than third world nations, but as you said, at the end of the day, if we do not value human life, then what's left? Because humans are what, create the ingenuity
Right.
to develop cures for cancer or things like that, but
Right.
they're the teachers, they're the doctors, they're the future, like we used to talk about. You're going to be the future whoever you want to be. And when I speak to kids or other groups, I talk about be the best individual that you can be, and then labels won't matter, because people will know you by your character, by your heart,
Right.
by who you choose to become and who you choose not to be. Okay.
You don't have to be a born again Christian who's always going around talking Jesus and God all the time.
No.
You just got to be somebody that values human life, because the other thing that is connected to this is crime. And when we don't value human life, we tend to ignore crime more, because
Absolutely.
we tend to look. There's a woman here in New Orleans, not too far from where I live, that she was being carjacked, and when they took her out of the car, they ripped her arm off.
Oh,
She's like a 70-year-old woman, you
sorry.
know, and she bled to death. Okay. And but when you look at the dismantling, it's not like, okay, you got to be pro-life or pro-choice. Okay, you got to be against human trafficking. Okay. When you look at all these different segments of the dismantling of respect or the new
Mhm.
of human life or our society. But I don't want to stray too far away from you because I was getting ready to ask you about your book, Voices
Mhm.
Against Trafficking. You have another book. Did that book lead? Let's tell me about that book. But did that book lead into your nonprofit?
Yes, yes. So both those books actually give proceeds back to victims of human trafficking and child sexual exploitation. But Voices Against Trafficking, The Strength of Many Voices Speaking as One, we brought that book out kind of as a handbook, a conversation opener, and enlightenment on the subject. There are about 18, 19 chapters in there from top voices all over the country and Mexico in that edition, talking about we have media, we have survivor stories, we have information on tips for parents, how to prevent child abuse, what to do. We have helplines, hotlines for people to call if they're feeling suicidal or their kid is suicidal, or obviously child abuse, any of that, any of the reporting numbers, we have those there. But each chapter has something. When you travel, what do you know if somebody's being trafficked, if the kid's next
Right.
to you? So we wanted to give people information, schools information. We had a company out here, they bought one of our books, put it in a basket with a bunch of goodies, and gave it to every principal in the elementary schools in our area, because they wanted to make sure each school where their kids were going had a book, so at the very least they could look at it and maybe learn from it, or have me come speak or something. But that book was designed to be a starter. We're going to bring out a second edition this year. It'll be a little smaller version, because we're also bringing out, we're going to launch any day now, a magazine called Voices of Courage that will be nationally distributed. And Voices of Courage highlight the people that are on the ground, that are in the forefront of this fight, to end the human poaching, as I call it, whether it's
Wow.
children, adults, any of that. And so we're highlighting individuals that are doing something that is changing their own neighborhood, community, even the nation to some extent, and globally, but maybe they're not getting recognized, or maybe nobody knows about it. So we're bringing truth and we're bringing hope together in that magazine that will come
Amazing.
out bi-monthly, because we want to continue creating greater awareness of the topic, that every human's rights should be respected, whether they're in the womb or they're out of the womb, or they're older or they're younger, or they're this or they're that. If they're a human being, they deserve to be valued. And that's what we've lost in this country. So the books definitely are both on Amazon.com. Some of the proceeds go to the victims, and then the magazine, of course, is going to generate some revenue so that our nonprofit can do more things. So the website's voicesagainsttrafficking.com. They can also buy the book there. They can also donate. We have lifetime memberships, $50. Most families can afford that. So $50 helps us rescue and save more victims.
Awesome. Well, and not only that, but like I said, the thought was that, human trafficking is kind of like the Planned Parenthood or the pro-abortion industry in America. It's not only degrading human life, but it's deteriorating our society.
Mhm.
And I don't want to preach taking away a woman's right to choose, so to speak. But that's why I like talking about adoption, because I think that adoption is a way to promote life and the valuation of life in such a way that you don't touch freedom. And again, I'm walking that fine line in such a way that there's a lot of people out there who, when they get into that argument of pro-life, pro-choice, human trafficking, it's touchy or taboo. They need a skill. They need an arrow in their quiver to be able to walk a line that helps them show better decisions to people. Is that a good way to put it? I'm not.
Yeah, that's definitely a good perspective. And to your point about the arrows and quivers and such, our goal is to provide as many tools, whether it's books, TV shows, whether it's free. We have free
You
online
see where I'm
forums.
going with this. Perfect. Yeah, you
Yeah,
see where I'm going.
yeah,
Right.
every quarter. So all of that is hugely important. And I was adopted as an adult right before my husband proposed to me. And even though people said, "Well, why would you do that?" Because it was part of my healing process. I was friends with somebody. We looked a lot like each other. People thought we were sisters, and she's like, "Oh, my mom and dad would love to, adopt you if they could." And
How
so
old were you?
I was 34,
You
actually.
had somebody adopt you at 34 years old?
I was, and they're who I call my parents. They've both passed, just like my biological. But I will tell you this as well, because there's probably somebody out there wondering what the heck. But that new birth certificate with that new name, because as females we carry the maiden name, and so I really knew that they loved me. They chose me. They chose to do that. And I remember my mom, who's from Texas, was from Texas. She said, we're awfully poor. We don't have a whole lot. I said, you know what you do have? I said, you love me. You love my husband, and you're proud of me. That's all I ever wanted in my life. I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted someone to be proud of me. And I said, plus I'm paid for, I'm educated. It's a good deal for you guys. So they were just amazing, and we only had 12 years together total. So when our daughter came along, Allison, again, as an adult adoption, she legally was 24. She's 27 now. That was the same thing. People think, oh, well, you're an adult, figure it out, don't worry about it. But everyone needs to belong, and there are a
But
lot
you
of
know what
young people.
so here's what I think is key to what you're saying,
Mhm,
Andy, and I'm gonna connect this politically, again. You're giving somebody a tool
mhm.
to heal themselves.
Yes.
You're giving parts of our society a way to heal themselves naturally, a way to heal themselves in such a way that they are able to be productive citizens, that they are able to integrate back into society to help stop what those people have to realize, that you're given this tool that they're going, okay, maybe I want to allow myself to be adopted or whatever the case may be as an adult, and they're healing. You're giving them a tool to not only improve their life,
Mhm,
but to improve our society's life, our community's
mhm.
world, because now you're putting somebody back into, for lack of a better way of saying it, back into service. You're integrating them back into society. They feel healed, and they're able to contribute to their community, their state, and our country. And
Right.
they're able to help stop these things from happening in the future. It's all about saving our country. And if we don't, and a lot of people think of saving our country as saying, oh, well, we got to stop spending, we got to stop those liberal Democrats, or we got to stop those evil Republicans, whatever the case may be. No, we got to fix parts of our society that help stop the degradation of it in the future. We got to
Yes.
find ways, and I believe that helping promote safety for children and healing is a way to do it.
Absolutely. And we have a curriculum. We partnered with the Paratus Group with a situational awareness curriculum that in 4 minutes a day, just 4 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 90 days, any family, any single person, anyone that's in charge of children can learn how to better safeguard themselves and the children they're in charge of. So we brought out curriculum. We're bringing out all kinds of different things. We're partnering with those people that are getting better ways to help us, combat this evil. But at the end of the day, even when we catch predators, we have to put them in jail. We have to enforce the laws that are already on the books. One act of human trafficking federally can carry up to 20 years. Okay. And on the state level, 5 to 8 years, which personally I don't think is enough. But okay, at
Right.
this point, if we actually enforce those laws, that would make a dent. Okay, so we need to make sure that our legislators are actually following the laws and enforcing them. I had a district attorney here in our area who publicly said he didn't think human trafficking existed because he didn't prosecute it. And that if you were a prostitute at 18 or older, that you chose that. Now, I'm sorry, but I don't know any young girl who grows up thinking, oh, I'd love to be a prostitute, right? It doesn't happen that way. Some people choose that as adults for different reasons, but most of our kids, if they were involved in that, and very few were, they knew it was wrong, but they also were hungry. They also didn't have anyone to intercede and tell us. And so sometimes they did those things, but that's not the norm for a young person, to sell themselves. So I wanted to mention too that my primary predator, my birth mother, so 3 years ago, finally, she passed from this life after 91 years of living.
Wow.
And so victims live with the fact that someday one of those people could pop up in their life, especially if it's a family member that caused, the
Kaylee's law stops that.
Well, and so yeah, so anyway, I just was like so thrilled when I got that call because I'd waited decades for that to happen, to know that physically that person was in the ground and could never touch me because they either need life imprisonment or they need to be dead. That's what most victims will tell you. And even though there's debate about, oh, how cruel solitary confinement is, how cruel is it to have somebody my age, even 60 years plus, have to live with the damage, the physical pain, the PTSD, all of those things. Even though I've gone through a lot of counseling and therapy, I still have my moments where my healing is in process.
Your the perpetrators have put you in solitary confinement
Yeah.
in one way, shape, or form in your
Mhm.
life. What when we talk about human trafficking, there's a few things I want to ask you. What about the myths? Are there myths that you like to talk about human trafficking?
Yeah, there are a few. We mentioned one that, oh, it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. Okay, so let's take that. We gave the statistic, but let's give an example. So what about the coach that, coaches a girls soccer team and has a pizza party at his house?
That happened to Kaylee Kozak.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. What about the friend of your daughter? Okay, you want her to go have a sleepover? She's 12, she's old enough, sure, but what about her friends' brothers? Are they going to be there? What about the friend's single dad? You have to go further than, oh, well, they show up at church or they had a barbecue or they seem like nice people or they have good jobs. That doesn't make any difference to a predator
Right.
because before the last few years and the things that have changed, the average profile was a Caucasian male, 35 to 45, in a gated community with his own family as the primary predator or leader of a ring. Now the age has dropped to mid 20s because here's the thing, a gang that might distribute drugs, they could distribute their girlfriends and have less chance of getting caught. They could sell a girlfriend 20, 25 times a night. And who's she going to go tell? Is she going to go home to her mom and say, hey, guess what happened to me last night?
So
No.
I want to stop you for 1 second.
Mhm.
What amazes me, I don't know what amazes me. What makes me, I don't know how to say this. You got me speechless there for a second. Is that we had that, of course, human trafficking, but that you say 25 times in one night.
Mhm.
That there's that many men out there that are willing to pay for that.
Mhm.
That often. I mean,
Well, you have enough men. Let's say you invite, in this instance, excuse me, with the gang, if you invite, say, your girlfriend over to a party and most of your buddies are there and they pay for 15 minutes or they pay for whatever they get, you can sell often. And this is how a lot of victims get hooked on drugs. They die from the drugs, they die from diseases, but the ones that make it out, it's not their fault that they've been put through so many drugs and so many different events, let's call them, day after day after day. The average lifespan for a human trafficking victim is 7 years if they're lucky to make it through the 7 years.
really.
And only
Is that
one in 100 walks away, usually.
is that 7 up to 7 years old or 7 year span?
No, a 7 year span once it begins. And so for the teenagers, once they're on the street within 48 hours, the clock is ticking. They will most likely be approached or taken into some kind of trafficking ring. So for parents out there, let me give you a real simple example. Say you have a 12, 13, 14-year old, they want to make some money. There are summer jobs that are posted all the time at the grocery store, on telephone poles, but who's behind those ads, for the babysitting or for mowing the lawns, or hey, don't worry about it, we'll pick you up, we have a van, we pick up a lot of kids in your area, right? And we'll take you to the job, we'll take you to the farm or whatever it is that needs to be uh, taken care of. So there, and of course modeling, we all know that that's a big attraction for young people, to be a model or to be a rock star, fame and fortune. But What most of those kids don't know is how to protect themselves, how to verify, how to figure out, is the person on the other end of that ad who they really say they are. And that's one of the, we're going to have another article on that in our magazine coming out very soon this month about the fashion industry and about modeling and what it really is from someone who knows. And so we want to bring different perspectives so that everyone out there can find something to relate to. The dance industry is rife with predatory activity. We have articles, we have stories on that. And we also give people, here's what you can do today. Go to voicesagainsttrafficking.com, look up the helplines and hotlines, put them in your phone. It doesn't cost you anything to put those numbers in your phone right now, tonight, or today. And then you're prepared. If you do see something, you can confidently call one of those numbers, say something, and feel in a neutral way and feel like you've done something. Traveling, if you're traveling, there's so many things you need to know about what to look for, or if you suspect something, how to report that. So again, we have become lazy in terms of our diligence. And as you said, we have gone so far to devalue the worth of children. I'm honestly amazed that people are still having babies. But uh, we've crushed the beautiful futures and hopes of our children in this nation. And I truly pray that we will rise up again, that we will decide that today this will no longer be a nation where we discard our children, where we sell them, where we violate them, where we hurt them, because at some point they will not exist and we will not have a future. We will not have a country.
I couldn't have said it better. I mean, that right there alone, Andy, is what it's, when people ask why, why would you bring on a subject of human traffic on a show where, it's about America. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad things going on in America right now that are going to destroy our country if we don't stop it, and this is one of them. And I can't thank you enough. I'm just perplexed. I usually don't have. I usually not short of words, but you've affected me in a way where I've made me a little short of words on this, because I'm truly touched in a way that I'm hopeful that you're making a big difference.
I'm hopeful too. And each day, if it's one more, and one more, then it's worth it. Everything that I went through in my life was for a purpose, and it hasn't been without cost. There have been a lot of physical disabilities because of some of the abuses from the past, and just also the things that we've done, to rescue. But I count it all gain if that next person doesn't have to go through what I did or what other people have done. And it doesn't have to be human trafficking. One sexual assault can entirely change the life of a person, whether you're male or female. And for the men, it's a little harder, because for all of the what I would call the freedoms we have, we still think that if a man gets violated, it's somehow that's they can't deal with that. They expect women to be, but not men. But it's on the rise. So my encouragement, though, is that we can do things together, collectively, our voices as one. And if people want to join us, there's a way to just go to our website and add your name to our roster. We want to get 1 million names so that we can take those names and say, hey, Mr. or Ms. Legislator, we have 1 million names. And here's what we want. We want you to enforce the laws against predators. We want you to provide more resources in your budgets for the mental health and whatever our victims need. We want you to look at the things that are working in other areas and copy them. Get programs like what we had in every state, so that more people, like you said, can regain or rediscover their value and then do beautiful things for this nation.
I love it, Andy. Andy, you're awesome. You're amazing. I would hope that everybody shares this video interview of you and finds out how to get involved, donate to your organization, buy your books, and reach out to you, because it sounds like not only do you like giving the raw information out, but you also like to be a resource for information that people can call on to find out how they can get involved in their individual state, even. you know.
Absolutely. And we speak our roster of speakers, they're available to anyone who's willing, whether it's Zoom or in person, we figure it out. But if they go to our site, they see a speaker that looks good to them, we're happy to do that. We would rather people get educated and become aware and say, all right, I'm not comfortable with the elephant in the room, but let me at least look at it and figure out what kind it is.
Andy, one last question, and then I'm a sign out on the podcast, but I'm gonna talk to you, offline after I end the podcast for a few minutes. But one last question I'd like to ask everybody. We've talked about a lot of things that divide us up tonight. We've talked about a lot of things that we're trying to unite on. In your opinion, what unites people in America?
Oh, that's a really big question. I would like to believe that what unites people in America is a common cause, a common belief that all life is valuable. Okay, no matter what age, stage, culture, sex, gender, it doesn't matter, that all life is meaningful. And that whether we agree, disagree, want to, don't want to, at the end of the day, if that one of those lives is in danger or one of those lives is in peril of some kind, that we will step up to protect it,
I love
because
it.
that is the American way. That's what we fought for to become this country, was to have freedoms, but to be responsible with those freedoms.
I think that is an excellent statement. Be responsible with our freedoms.
Mhm.
Andy, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Everybody else, please share the video, share the podcast. Go check into Andi Buerger, check into her sites, buy her book at Amazon, and thank you all very much. And I'll have another interview here coming up in 10 minutes. Thank you so much.